Welcome, I'll be reacting to The Man Who Invented Christmas. I don't know too much about this, but based on the title and the poster, it looks like Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Speaking of Christmas, quick reminder, I do have Yuletide merch right now in my shop. T-shirts, little stuffed animals like this. Check out the link in the show description. This is a commentary, not a market substitute. Support the original.
The people's author.
I like that we're seeing his reaction backstage. Oh my. There are ankles showing. America. He's like, why did I agree to do NaNoWriMo? Yeah, been there.
I have told you repeatedly not to disturb me when I am working.
I love this actor. She's awesome.
You can see Mr. Foster.
Colonel Foster from Moonbase?
French, new doors, a new chandelier, all chosen by Charles.
Oh, wow.
And the staircase is
That's gorgeous.
75? Was it made of gold?
Carrara marble, senor.
Love that board game. Palaces of Carrara. That's an obscure Eurogamer joke. I'm sorry.
And the money? Leave the publishers to me.
The publishers are going to be upset about the recent flops, though, and they're going to want something brilliant. Or no advance. He's in this too? Who isn't in it?
You have a new book in mind?
Well, in that case, I mean, we'd obviously love to consider it.
Consider.
That is to say, if we like it.
I thought Victorian novels were published a few chapters at a time in installments, usually in periodicals. Now, I don't know a whole lot about Dickens because, I'll be frank here, I prefer Anthony Trollope and Mrs. Gaskell in this time period. Sorry, Dickens. But I'm pretty sure they were published a few chapters at a time rather than, here is a novel. So this is an odd conversation to have. He's spending beyond his income. Should not have bought that chandelier.
What are you doing here?
I'm hiding from Thackeray.
Thackeray! Sorry, I'm more excited about Thackeray than you, because Thackeray's cooler. Sorry, Dickens. His books are so much better. I forgot to mention him. How could I have forgotten to mention Thackeray?
You're not Robertson.
The name is Marley, sir.
Oh, I see.
We'll have some oysters and a bottle of champagne.
Very good, sir.
That's quite expensive.
Champagne.
I hope you're paying.
Hello, Thackeray. How are you?
Tom.
Yes!
I thank you. Go on, what did they say?
Dull, vapid, and vulgar.
Oh, look, there's Macready. Poor thing. His Macbeth was absolutely shredded in the Times. I must go and give him my condolences.
You know what? Could really get Thackeray back here, knowing him. Order peas, and then take a knife and eat them off your knife. Because Thackeray hated that. He went on and on ranting about it in several of his books. So if I was Dickens, I'd be like, Thackeray, how are you?
I've told them we'll have the first chapter done by the end of the year. You like a deadline.
Do you mind telling me what it's about?
Leave that up to you.
His agent is a genius. I love his agent.
And he calls to them.
Christmas in this time period was a lot like Halloween is now. It was more about hauntings and spirits and things like that.
It's only a stub.
Another hour in there.
Oh, really, Charles?
If you carry on like this, we'll end up in the poorhouse.
You're funny.
I'm not joking.
Charles!
I'm honestly on his wife's side right here. He was so extravagant earlier, and now he's obsessing over a candle. Now, she was right also, because I accidentally let one of my candles burn below about this high. It took me half an hour to get all the wax out to get the new candle in. Whereas if you pull it out when there's still a little bit left, it just goes right out. It's interesting that they chose this as the, not quite an argument, but definitely a tense discussion between the two of them, because candles are and were expensive. And you go through a lot of them. I would say a candle of that height would be 1.5 evenings per candle. It's interesting that they sleep in the same bedroom. Very unusual.
Christmas Eve, the veils between this world and the next thin out, and that's when the spirits cross over and walk among us.
Mm-hmm. He's in this too? He's my favorite in Wives and Daughters. Speaking of Mrs. Gaskell.
What do you suggest we do with those people?
Are there no workhouses?
Oh, here we
How
go.
many people would rather die than go there?
Then they better do it and reduce the surplus population.
We have our Scrooge inspiration. Far cry from Molly's dad. Your hat! Where is it? Oh, he's carrying it. Good. Well, how about... Beautiful symmetry. And so many Celtic crosses. All right, he has the ingredients for the story now. Just need to stew it up, let it simmer.
Humbug.
You know, half of being a writer, I think, is observation and taking what you see and reimagining it. Oh, and the knocker came off. Of course. The knocker scene.
It's a short book, short and sharp. A
novella.
blow to the heart of this smug, self-satisfied age. Humbug, a miser's lament.
No. No.
Why not?
Does anybody really celebrate it anymore, apart from our clerk, who never misses an opportunity to take a day off with pay?
More or less an opportunity for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December.
More quotes. He returned it? I know you're probably tired of me saying he's in this too, but he's in this too?
$5.
Very well, thank you.
Oh, there must be a cat. I hear it. Show us the cat. Oh, so cute. Oh, no. Ew. Ah. Ugh.
The bad news is the defendants have no money. Bankrupt. Disappointing, I know. Here's my bill.
Oh, no. You were in so much trouble. This is not the time to self-publish, Charles.
Aladdin and his magic lamp.
Oh, that's a good trade.
Scrooge. Father, in here.
Of course.
He really looks like Charles Dickens looks like when he's older, which makes sense as the father.
The children and I will so enjoy having some company in the evenings.
Was that the chandelier?
The time for paying bills without money. The time for finding yourself...
I mean, you're basically taking dictation when you're writing.
Covered as old sinner.
Going well?
Bye. Put a chest in front of that door so they can't open it.
Heap.
Oh, you like Uriah Heep?
Marley.
I named thee Marley.
I wear the chain I forged in life.
Link by link.
I made it. Link by link.
It's interesting. It's an adaptation and also kind of a fictionalized behind the scenes at the same time. I would say this reminds me a lot of Men of La Mancha because it's a similar genre, I would say, where you both have the story of Don Quixote, but also the story of Don Miguel de Cervantes at the same time, kind of coming in and out of each other, switching back to regular scenes, sometimes at the same time, sometimes totally just the story of Don Quixote. Very similar, only no singing.
With the love we bear one another. And may God bless us.
Everyone.
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 Miss Wigmore.
Did you ask her yet?
My father had no intention for her to marry the son of a butcher.
Gilded?
He's in it? Okay, sorry. I have to stop saying that. But what?
Impossible for an ordinary man, but you are no ordinary man, Mr. Leach.
You're a duke. Well, actually not in this one, but in Outlander.
Come on then, young'un.
Mm-hmm. More inspiration. The hair in this is pretty good. Honestly, with this many people in his house, writing at night might be the best idea. The Ghost of Christmas Past, I take it? Yes. Ah, Mr. Fezziwig! The sound design.
That's the market rate.
The market rate is not necessarily the right rate.
Never heard such folly.
This is actually just a well-done Christmas carol.
Especially that Tiny Tim. Poor mite.
Did she just get Tiny Tim his happy ending?
One-sided?
Well, my character doesn't get to explain his side of things. So I've taken the liberty of writing a short speech. Yeah, something about the...
This is so accurate to writing. The characters keep bringing stuff and they're like, I want to do this. And you, the author, are like, no, I don't want you to do that. And they're like, well, we're doing it anyway.
He's the soul of kindness and generosity. He's Forster.
His friend is just the best person in this whole film.
So you had a few flops. What of it?
You're still young. It's not as if you're an old man.
I don't think he made that much money from A Christmas Carol, though. At least at first, right? I don't know. What do you think? Was this the right call for him to say, go big or go home? Risking his whole family on this? Or should he have been a little more prudent, gotten a cheaper illustrator, cheaper editions, and therefore got more profit? I mean, I guess that's like against everything Christmas Carol stands for. But just from a practical standpoint, what do you think? Did he make the right call?
It will happen in the time before us, is that so?
I still think the best Ghost of Christmas Future was the Doctor Who version, where he sees himself.
So what do you think? Is this who you want to become, Kazran?
I'm so...
And the family has no money for a doctor.
That Scrooge must save him.
Me?
I knew she'd save him.
I thought this was a ghost story, not a fairy tale.
He wouldn't let Tiny Tim die, Mr. Dickens. He has a heart, doesn't he?
I've probably seen 100 versions of this, and Tiny Tim gets me every time.
It's been over a month.
Oh! We shall catch the afternoon train tomorrow.
Tiny Tim.
Go on.
You're really going to let him die?
Oh, not you as well.
It's a Christmas book. Yeah? Shouldn't it be hopeful? Our better natures will prevail.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
For reminding me why I never ask your opinion on my work. Your services are no longer required.
No. Dickens, you've lost your perspective on Christmas right now.
I'm the author here.
Allegedly.
I'm going out.
I'm sorry, this just reminds me of writing so much.
No friends, no family?
No one he trusts.
Why?
Because he's afraid.
By the end of the movie, he's the one who has to change.
Hello, chaps.
Is it Thackeray again? I am living for these cameos.
My last book has come out in a railway edition. Sold 10,000 copies.
Which
in a week.
book? I don't see anything listed for 1843. And Vanity Fair hasn't been published yet, right? Oh yeah, Book of Snobs. I think that's my favorite of all the Thackeray books. Ugh, so brilliant and hilarious. Although Pendennis is amazing. I have a second edition of that. Love Pendennis. Can you please go to Anthony Trollope's club?
The characters won't do what I want.
Oh, I feel you. I feel you.
Well, I'm afraid.
You just have to give up at a certain point as an author, though. They're just gonna do what they want. Oh, he said Scrooge, aka him right now, wouldn't change because of fear. Not facing the past.
Going through the rubbish like a tramp, selling bits and pieces of me. Is this your business?
That's disgusting. In this case, I'm with Dickens. That was a low move. Betrayal of trust there.
Take this child away from here and see that she never disturbs me ever again. Do you hear?
Yes, sir.
Come on, wee girl.
Oh my. Hopefully he numbered his pages.
But you have no idea what it's like to live with you. To be always walking on eggshells.
She kind of called him out on it right there. It's time for him to listen.
I made you some good before I die.
Tara?
You were right about Tiny Tim. He doesn't die.
The secret is to warm the treacle first.
There you are.
That's very kind. What's your name, Constable?
My name, Copperfield, sir.
It does look nice. Oh, that crinkle of new books. I bet it smells amazing. And here comes the snow. Deck the Halls wasn't written yet, was it? Let me check that. Because that's da 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 da. 1862. They're using songs from the future. They thought I wouldn't notice, but I did. That's a neat punch bowl, though.
It's a tree for Christmas, a Christmas tree, I suppose. Now the royal family have got one, it'll be all the rage.
He's not wrong.
Papa had a change of heart.
Oh, excellent.
I think you're going to want to hear this. It's by Thackeray.
Bravo, Charles.
Good old Thackeray.
And everyone will be welcome.
Even people who steal my manuscripts.
Merry, Merry Christmas to one and all.
I think they compiled a list of all the best actors from the UK and just called them all up and said, hey, do you want to be in this? We'll fit you in somehow. I recognized pretty much everyone in the entire cast. I've seen them at other period dramas and BBC specials, etc. They definitely treated this as though it was an adaptation of Dickens. If you watch things like Bleak House, David Copperfield, they have a similar feel to it, the directorial style, cinematography, the lighting, the musical score. There's a distinct style that they captured very well here. They also kept the sets very simplistic. This almost felt like a stage play, and I think that was a good choice. It lent a more intimate atmosphere to it. You weren't distracted by glitzy backgrounds. The costuming, I think, hit that perfect point where it wasn't entirely accurate, but it was not inaccurate either. So it was like a good balance of just modern enough, but also not distracting if you're familiar with what they were actually wearing in the time period. I don't think, other than the hatless running down the street scene, I ever got to a point where it was like, ooh, that's just terrible. No, they were all good. They could have used a few more starched petticoats, but we'll let that slide. I loved Thackeray sliding in and out all the time, just being his usual satirical, playfully cutting in his remarks. If you've read his works, that's very much what he's like, at least in print. But when it counts, he can really write some beautiful stuff, like we saw there at the end with the review. The thing I liked about the message is that it showed Scrooge can really apply to all kinds of people. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to be, on the older side. You can be any age. You can be actually kind of poor, like Dickens was in this situation. But you can still be acting like a Scrooge and have something to learn from this. I think that was the part that really struck me. I've always had this idea in my head of, oh, well, I can't be Scrooge. Look at my bank account. Trust me, I'm not Scrooge. However, here we saw, no, it's his attitude, not his bank account, that's the problem here. And I tend to be a lot like Dickens sometimes in this movie. When I start getting upset and things are not going well, my first instinct is always to push everyone away. Don't bother me. Lock yourself in your room and write, kind of a thing. Or read, depending. I do occasionally suffer from very acute depression. And when I start sliding down there, I react like he did. Slam the door in everyone's face. Until everyone hates you. And of course, that simply proves what your kind of internal monologue is telling you of, I don't matter. I'd be better off if I wasn't wasting space on this planet. I'm a terrible person. No one could ever love someone as pathetic as I am. That's the constant internal monologue. And then you kind of tend to act out when you have characters like his wife and his friend. I won't say his father because his father is a piece of work, but there are people in his life who truly care about him. And there's this moment when he and his wife are arguing and he's like, look, this is who I am. This is me. You knew that when you married me. And she's like, yeah, I did. But it doesn't make it any easier to deal with. So the scene between Scrooge in the grave and young author Dickens, and both of them realize they're the same person. And this can't go on the way it is. And sometimes at least when I get very depressed, it feels like you're in that grave and the walls are closing in like that. You're like, maybe I should just let them. Maybe I should just let the walls close in. Just give up. And that's when Dickens says, we're now at the final chapter. We're at the end. This is the turning point. But you have to make that decision to climb out of that grave and try to live again. And sometimes that's hard to do if you're on your own. Those of us who have very intense imaginations, that's when it becomes so important. Whether it's imagining Galadriel reaching out her hand as she does to Frodo, or whatever it is to get you to just climb out. And then, of course, you have to do the rounds and kind of crawl around to everyone you know and beg forgiveness for kind of being pretty prickly as you were sliding into depression. And that's always very awkward because it's like you have no control over it, and yet at the same time, you are the one in the wrong. And you got to apologize for that. I did not mean to go this in depth with A Little Christmas Film. However, I think it brings up a lot to think about, which is surprising considering I've probably seen Christmas Carol several hundred times, especially as a theater critic when I had to see plays about it. I swear every single theater did it every year. So there was like 10 a year. This is the first time I've had the realization, I guess you could say, that Scrooge can be any of us. And that means the responsibility to bring hope and joy, not only back into Christmas, but the whole year is also our responsibility. And that can be very difficult. So clearly this was a very well done movie and not just another adaptation. I think it had something new to say.